Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host, who is always looking for new and innovative ways to help sports organizations succeed in the digital age, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. Yes, my name is Sean Callanan, and welcome to episode 338. On this episode, I catch up with Chloe Alsop. She's the General Manager of Marketing and Media at Western United FC. Thank you very much for listening. You might be doing so on our website, sportsgeekhq.com, or you might be listening on your favourite podcast app. Mine happens to be Pocket Casts, still going strong for many years. It's still my go-to when I'm looking for a new podcast, and that's the platform I use. But we are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all the places you can get good podcasts. I really do appreciate it when you do share the episodes, whether you do so silently via the dark web, via a WhatsApp chat or a sneaky text message. Really do appreciate it. Word of mouth does go a long way. As always, you can contact me via email, sean@sportsgeekhq.com, or via socials at Sean Callanan or at SportsGeek on most platforms. I think you're really going to enjoy this chat with Chloe, talk about her career in the lead up and before she got into the world of football. But we talk about a really important campaign, Dumb Ways to Die. You might know of it, you might have seen it, you might not know its origin. So we get to talk about that in this chat. So please enjoy my chat with Chloe Alsop, the General Manager of Marketing and Media at Western United. Very happy to welcome Chloe Alsop. She is the General Manager of Marketing and Media at Western United FC. Chloe, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
No problems. Well, first of all, what I normally do is ask people how they got their start in sports, and there was a few steps for you to get there. But before you got your start in sports, how did you get your start? Because there's some interesting roles there that I wanted to discuss.
Yeah, sure. So I studied at the University of Melbourne, and I did a commerce degree in economics. Then I did another degree with an honours degree in public policy. So kind of have started somewhere and not finished there. I moved and worked into a government role at Human Services. So I went straight into a role working as a project officer / speechwriter for the secretary of that department. So a lot of preparing content, researching for her, and then followed that in the environment sector as well, working for what's now Sustainability Victoria. Had a stint with London Remade as part of that job, which is a similar environmental agency in London. And then, again, lots of writing, media management, and back in the day when you had to use the phone and ring journos. Send
out press releases as faxes and those kind of things would have been that time?
Yeah, fax the release, do the follow-up call, did you get the media release, all of those kind of wonderful things we take for granted these days. And then I moved over into agency land, and the bulk of that was at Clemenger Harvey Edge, at the PR Edge, and working on lifestyle accounts. Curtis Stone, I worked with Village Roadshow Theme Parks, Borders Bookstore, which I don't think's around anymore, but it was a big global book chain, and just really lifestyle products, IGA supermarkets. We built a content-based TV show for them, which was a bit of a first back then.
And this was all in that original, in that role. It was more traditional media. Like I said, creating content, but it was for TV.
Yeah.
It was sort of that pre-digital, pre-social era where you were making sure they were getting in print and mentioned on radio. It was in that sort of space with a variety of different clients.
Yeah, definitely. It was a lot of pitching ideas to clients, and then really getting that earned media for the clients, and building, worked on the Mazda account and wrote and published their owner magazines that they'd send out, direct mail pieces. So a lot of mainly earned media, but a bit of direct as well. Working as an agency, sort of cross-channel integrated campaigns. So you have the advertising suits in there managing the Mazda account, and you do that sort of PR direct arm for them. And then one of the clients we worked on there was the then train company for Melbourne, Connex. So we did some PR for them, and from there I moved over to work for the client, which is, the original sin when you're in agency land, to jump ship to the client. But I did it. That was okay. And then soon after that, Connex lost the train operation in Melbourne, and MTR from Hong Kong won it, and I stayed on, and we introduced the Metro Trains brand to Melbourne, which is still running to this day.
And so was that a more of a pure marketing role with the Metro Trains, one launching a brand and sort of moving into that marketing space? Is that sort of where you started to do more of the marketing side of your role?
Yeah, definitely. So there was a lot of comms with it, with sort of customer information and a lot of customer information, and sort of transitioning that from, your printed timetables and station posters to building out apps and better digital information for them to have on their journey. And they really pivoted that company to make the customer in the middle of everything they did, which was very different to the past operator, and probably now most do it, but back then that was a bit of probably part of why they won the bid. But yeah, lots of ways of improving the customer experience and for information and for travelling. And then, I didn't really do the media part of it there. We had a media team we worked with. So obviously in Melbourne, across the world probably, it's train brands are pretty hated. And if you're on the front of the paper, it's not because you've done something good. It's because you've left people behind or something's gone wrong. So I didn't have to do the issues management, which is good, but I had that opportunity to, what can we do to try and make people like us a bit more? They didn't have to love us, but they had to like us just a little bit more, and make that journey more exciting or more enjoyable.
So that leads me to the reason I wanted to ask you about the Metro Train stuff is the Dumb Ways to Die campaign, award-winning across a few evolutions of it, but and people might have heard of it and seen the Dumb Ways to Die IP in multiple forms. But you were there when that campaign kicked off. What was the everyone goes into a campaign, whether they're doing it internally or with an agency, and the brief, just make it go viral. So really, Chloe, just how do you do it? How do you just make it go viral? What was it like setting up that campaign?
Do you know what? I think I'll tell the story, but there's a few things that I think are key, and it's having a good relationship with your agency and not letting the suits keep you away from the creatives, and then also really finding out something that the customers need to know about and actually getting to the truth of what you're trying to do. So the story goes, there was some accidents happening on level crossings in other states across Australia, mainly in Queensland, a little bit regional New South Wales, and could see this coming up in the media monitoring. And it's like, I think I rang my account director at the time, Adrian Mills, probably one of the smartest people I've met in my life, amazing man. And I said, we need to do something about level crossings and safety. We've got nothing in market, and something's going to happen, and we're not going to have anything to say we've tried to do to change behaviour and keep people safe. He's like, yeah, come in, we'll have a chat about it. So I went in and we were just talking about what we needed to do, and I also spent a bit of time out on the network talking to the people at the coalface. So you speak to the people in train ops, people at the stations, and what we kind of got down to was the brief is it's really hard to get hit by a train because they go on straight lines on tracks. So most of the stories and anecdotal information we were getting back from our frontline workers was that people do really stupid things. They're on their, back in the day, they're on their iPods, they're on their phones. I remember a lady telling me a story about watching, she showed me the CCTV footage as well, a lady running down a steep ramp at South Yarra Station in Melbourne to get a train that was about to depart with a newborn baby in her arms, and just watching her run and sort of try and hold the baby and push the doors open. Like, this is crazy stuff. So we saw pictures of people whose house is backed onto train tracks having barbecues on the grassy hill. And it's like, you just look at some of these things and you're like, this is really behaviour that can be avoided. And then the second half of that brief into agency, they said, I don't want to do, and, full credit to we have in Victoria, the TAC, they do, advertising campaigns to stop people dying in car crashes. And there was, at the time, it's going back 10 years, they're very gruesome and you see the bodies dead and it's very the fear factor of advertising. I said, let's reverse that, like 180 it, and let's not scare people, because a lot of the people doing the dumb things and the next generation we want to change the behaviour of, they're young, and young people, we've all been there. You don't fear dying. You don't think you can see something, awful and gruesome, but you just don't have that fear of it. I think as you age, you get closer to that day, you do actually start to be a bit more cautious in your life. But that was essentially the two briefs. People are doing dumb things and don't make it gruesome.
Was the third piece also that that having to talk to a younger audience? Because if you had have just said, great, create me a great TVC, and just for context, like we're saying, this is 10 years ago, 2012, like that younger audience were even watching less TV back then and starting to move to different platforms. So it was also that part of the brief to say, we need for this, idea and this creative to work on some of these newer platforms, like YouTube, leveraging things like Spotify. Were they key in, part of the viral success of it?
They were definitely key in it, and I'll give the agency credit. The brief was, we didn't have a big budget for this campaign, and the brief actually started as something for in the station environment. So like a poster campaign or, a little bit of web. I don't even think Metro had social media. I think we had Twitter, and that was it back then. So this is back 2012, was 2011 we started working on it. I think the whole campaign in totality, until we sort of did 2.0s and extra things with the gaming, what have you, was like around the 200K mark. It wasn't a big campaign at all. So it was really, and I probably part of how I work is really getting that idea and then playing with it. But we went through probably around 8 rounds of creative. They were getting sick of me because it just wasn't what I wanted. I knew we were edging closer. Like there was ideas around getting, remember the TV show Jackass, what if you say it? That, about using that and saying these guys do millions of dumb things like snorting wasabi and silly stuff, but they'd never run in front of a train, that kind of concept. So we sort of evolved this to get to this place. And I remember this is the sort of folklore story that Adrian rang me before coming in for another round of creative to present. It's like, we'll be there soon and we're doing a song. And I was like, oh, not a jingle. Like, come on, this is crazy. And I said, I'm hanging the phone up. And then anyway, they came in, presented it. They had the lyrics to the song, and I'm very I think words are amazing, and I've always been passionate about words and language. And the words written on the page, and it was just the creative sort of genius of minds of John Mescal and Adrian in there. It's just my team, which was only 2 other people, we could see where it was going to go. This was something we was just like, oh, this is it, the words to that. And then there was sort of there was a sample of sort of a folk song of the territory they wanted the music in, and also first round illustration, but that actually changed quite a bit. And just sort of, we're going to do a song. We're thinking we'll, buy radio spots and launch it through radio. We're going to do YouTube. That's how we're going to, kick the campaign off. And then we, sort of probably a month of, building that, working with the illustrator and whose the illustration was genius, and just really letting the creatives have time to let the creative sit and make it what it was. Same with the music, like the efforts from the McCann team and the production team to get that music right, and listen to the client, like myself and the team from Metro. The creative team listened to nuances that we thought wouldn't work too, and it was just a really maybe once in a lifetime kind of working group of people that were all on the same page and had that respect for each other. And then it actually leaked the campaign. We're getting close to doing it. Because once you start to like something, everyone wants to build more. Let's do a microsite, which is, very 2012 language. We need a microsite. So we'll get that. We'll have the creative on it, and schools can download the posters and blah, blah, blah. So we're waiting to sort of build out this bigger campaign, and I've been trying to brief our media manager at the time, because everything we did in Metro, everything would get a negative angle on it from the media. And he rings me and says, I've just had a call from The Age, which is a Metro paper in Melbourne, and they've got hold of the campaign. And I was like, oh, no, this is going to ruin everything. And and they love it. And I was like, oh, okay, here we go. And then so we launched it, and, the rest is history. I think in the next day or so it had over 1 million views, and it kept growing and growing. And it's, when you hear 10 years later, 11 years later, you see Ryan Reynolds on TikTok using the sound and doing the smart ways to live or whatever it is. Like, it's quite phenomenal, like, that it's just kept going like that. But, we could write a book about the first 4 years of that campaign, because it was just there's stories of people sort of not wanting their name to it and worried about it. And then, it goes really successful, and suddenly everyone wants to be the owner or the creator of it and have the story. And, I travelled to Denver, and we worked with, the train company in Denver, and they used the campaigns for their safety. And, it's pretty phenomenal. I remember getting the tram into the city one day, and there must be a school excursion. I was surrounded by little kids, and they could see the posters outside, outdoor advertising. We had a campaign, some running at the stations, and then they're sort of sitting on the tram singing the song. And it's like, you see that sort of full circle effect of, all of the social growth and the global part is amazing. When the little kids that you're trying to get to are singing the song, it's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. And, we're now very familiar with people building out universes around IP. But, the fact that Dumb Ways to Die has, must have been terrific to have that foundation, then to say, hey, what does level 2 look like and level 3 look like? And you pretty much had a swing at every one of those things, as it got further and further, diving into gaming and doing all things of sort of adapting both that initial messaging to all these new and emerging platforms, both from a digital point of view and having a game. It must have been terribly rewarding to be able to have that. And like you said, success has many parents. Everyone puts their hand up to say they were part of it, but that for that crew internally, it must be terribly satisfying, especially when you have little kids learning that they're not doing those dumb things anymore.
Yeah, definitely. And full credit to the team. Like, there was a lot of work done to it was picked up, and once it got a run on it, went crazy. But the use of kind of seeding it through Reddit and some smart moves at the start really helped. And I think if you're on a client side and running campaigns with your agency, making sure you've got those smart people. Maybe they're not even, I think some of the guys that were there were the suits on the account was just so clever as well on really had a passion for digital and social, and just it just helps when you've got those smarts around you.
Definitely. And it's also that case of giving your creatives that space to be creative, and not being, putting that box in them and constricting them so much that they can't be, because if you don't let the creatives be creative, I guess they will stop being creative pretty quickly. And everyone
and
suffers.
I think there was some small things, done in that. Some of the lyrics were American words, like there's no moose in Melbourne anywhere, maybe one at the zoo, but, just little tweaks, creative parts like that helped it be a global campaign. And it just, that's what's good. Even things like, there's hoops to go through. Obviously, as a client of the government Metro, there was, this was up to the Premier to approve. So, things like having, you didn't see the Metro Trains logo till the end of the clip, so no one sort of knew who it was. And, that's a brave thing to do, because especially 12 years ago, even still till today, and I've experienced a lot in sport, where's the logo? Make the logo bigger, like it's very was probably ahead of its time in content that it did it without any branding. But now it's like, if anyone knows Metro Trains, because they're dumb ways to die. So it's put sort of the MTM on the global map, which for a company, a train operator that's owned by MTR in Hong Kong that has train operations around the world, it's a pretty good thing. It's not a bad thing to come out of a little marketing campaign from Melbourne.
Definitely. And so it takes a little bit of time to get there, but effectively your first role in sport was then at the VRC, the Victoria Racing Club, in a brand and acquisition role. What was your remit there? And, going from effectively the world of government or government contractor and being really embedded with a lot of, the processes around government to move to the world of sport, in major events in the VRC and hosting things like the Melbourne Cup and some of the big racing carnival and the spring racing carnival. What was it like moving into that role?
Yeah, so I mean, we did have quite a little bit to do with sport in my role at Metro, because we worked in partnership with VRC and AFL and to make sure we could get people to these big events. Melbourne's sporting capital of Australia, and getting to and from it was important. And as well as creating the Metro brand, that halo effect of the AFL and sporting clubs and then the Melbourne Cup was really important for us. And if we could, we did a lot of campaigns that sort of piggybacked off that and made going to the event part of the experience. So we'd do things like, for the football, we'd have the D train, which would make sure that all the Melbourne supporters would get on the same train together and push that out through social and lots of different things we did. So from that, I really started to think that's something I enjoyed. And I think you sort of want to, when you get a few runs on the board, you can then have a bit of a privilege of moving into a category that you're interested in as well. If you haven't done the hard yards, sort of working from, being the membership casual upwards. And so, the opportunity to go over to the VRC came my way, and I stepped into it. Was lucky enough to be going there when they're going through a bit of period of change as well, and worked under Caroline Ralph-Smith, who's now CEO at Melbourne Fashion Festival, and had some really big ideas to bring the sort of carnival back to the people in a way. There's a big push at VRC with the membership and all of the sort of high-end stuff they do extremely well, but that sort of GA younger audience, like how do we get them back? And just, learnt so much. I think that would have been when social media was really starting and content-led marketing was starting to come to its sort of escalate to where it is now. And, I remember the first Melbourne Cup sitting in the broadcast box at the very top of the stand on the finishing line, squished into it with two producers and my manager. And we were going live on Twitter for the Melbourne Cup, which had never been done in Southern Hemisphere, I think outside of America before. So, that sort of pinch yourself moment, I can't even explain what that feels like when you've got 100,000 people deadly silent before those gates open with the horses and you're doing something for a first like that. So there's a lot of privilege and innovation to work on at such a sort of well-resourced and established club. I think it was the sort of jokingly, you can do whatever you want, but don't break the cup. Which really means we've got 140 years of tradition and don't ruin it for us. So there's a lots of, we did the first campaign, second year campaign I worked on there. We had people with skateboards and in casual clothes in the campaign, which was unheard of. It was always, how do we market the Melbourne Cup? Well, we show them someone dressed up in experiencing the day. So you don't always have to show people. They just have to feel something and want to go somewhere. So we sort of changed the narrative and the situation on that. And then in a social sense, we did things like, build out, sounds simple, but it's how do we connect people more? They have all these members. So things like building a private Facebook group for the members. So because a lot of the members wouldn't comment on open pages because they're quite well-to-do people, and they also get a lot of hate coming through on, your commentary, but you gave them an enclosed place where then they could chat to other people and get sort of exclusive information and content about the club. So it was really good to get that started, and we, building out lots of different content to push to social through Carnival as well. Like I think we had a team of about 20 in production in that second Carnival, just to try and capture all the moments across and get it out really quickly. Like we were building like little short form pieces across each day of the Carnival. I think we did like over 120 15-second content pieces across all the different categories, sport, food, fashion, and getting that out quickly to people that weren't there. So when you do see it, it's not people dressed up and acting and building out an ad, so to speak, but actually they're actually seeing real people loving it. So that was sort of which again sounds a bit silly now because that's probably what everyone does now, but back then it was, a bit of a new way to do it, and being able to turn around production is sort of key to everything these days, I guess.
Do you think, I mean, you sort of spoke about that feeling of coming in as an outsider, like into the world of sport, but then also coming into the world of the sport content and what it demands and the rush nature of it, like, working the Melbourne Cup Carnival, you got 4 days and that's where all your eyeballs are on and you got to make it run. Do you think that experience led, solidified your skills and understanding the pace that's needed in sport for, moving to Western United FC as a startup team and like moving to what we would call clubland and the grind that is, club football, having a new match every week or 2 matches every week, and the constant turnaround of content and how the marketing message is a bit different to, going back to your times at Metro Trains and multiple iterations and, creative and working on this one big campaign to, it's always on, there's always content, you're always going to be talking. Do you think that time at the VRC got you ready for what you got yourself in for at Western United?
Well, that's a good question, actually. I'd say, like, if anyone gets a chance to work on a major international event, do it, because it's, all 2 parts to that. VRC is the Melbourne Cup Carnival, but there's also, I think, over 30 other race days, and you also have to sell all the event space at Flemington throughout the year to, it's that revenue stream and help the sales department do that. But for the Carnival, I think the time I was there too, and I was lucky enough to the people I was working with are really brand and creative-led people that believe that has an importance, and you can work in teams or clubs, sports, businesses where it's not valued. But I think, you're building out, like, I can't even begin to explain the workload leading into a carnival. Like you're doing things from, coasters in a bar have to be the right creative through to, broadcast, through to huge murals that you paint, through to, like, it's just phenomenal. And it's, but then, you've got media partners too. And so there's, hundreds of assets you have to serve them, but it's also a lot of money there that's very well resourced. Even all the stuff with partners, that's a whole other, the patience you have to get everything right for a partner that's spending millions of dollars that may not even be in the country. It's a lot of stakeholder management in that too. So, and the importance at VRC of everything being beautiful and elegant and perfect, I think was a big learning and something that probably I gravitated to as well, just from my skill sets and personality. So then when I took an opportunity, I was asked to go and work at the startup of Western United. It was kind of too much of an opportunity to say no to. It was such an unknown. Didn't have a big interest or background of football at all, like from Geelong, Go Cats, AFL, very part of my family's life, but we're not a sort of a soccer football family. And but sort of the big ambition and dream of the people behind Western United was sort of wet my whistle enough to go, I think I've got to challenge myself and do this. So sort of left the bit of the safety net and jumped.
Completely. I spoke to Jess Smith. She was, I think, the 3rd employee at Angel City FC and was there at the very get-go in helping with a lot of different things, wearing a lot of hats. what was it like those first 100 days in your role at Western United? Were there certain things that had to get, what were things locked in? Like you said, it wasn't like at the VRC where they've gone, here's our brand, this is what we expect, this is what our fans expect, this is what our members expect. Very much a blank canvas, but you also have to set that brand infrastructure up and set a tone for your team. So what was it like in those early days for you in that role?
Yeah, first of all, I love and watch on everything Angel City's doing. It's great. I think I was the fourth employee, and we had a little office which wasn't with our training facility out in Truganina, which was at that time almost just paddocks. It's now warehouses and a lot of infrastructure. But it was, I remember the first day, the then CEO sort of making me a coffee on the, $40 Nescafe little coffee machine, and coming from somewhere where if you wanted a coffee, the waiter brought it to your desk. It was a bit of a change. And I think when I got there was a logo and colours and very basic brand, but some good work. Could see sort of this has got potential, and just a lot of excited people, like a small group of people, but really passionate and excited. But for me, the biggest challenge was I wasn't a football person, and so probably I'm not sure if all sports are like this. I can only tell you from my experience. But if you're not a football person, you're behind the eight ball a long, long way. So you've got to build those relationships and trust and sort of almost promote yourself that you've got a lot of skills and ability. I could talk about dumb ways to die to the football people and they wouldn't care less. Like, if you hadn't grown up kicking the soccer ball, then you didn't know how to work at the club, which all came from a passion point. They absolutely love it. And I've not worked anywhere where people love something as much as they love football, and I've probably 4 years in become one of them. I can understand why the game pulls you in so much that it does across the world. But how did we start? I think we had about 3 months before round one. So I think it started off, we had board members running the social media pages. So sort of pulling those, changing the passwords on a few of those and getting across them was probably the first start. Trying to push for budget, any budget. I've sort of come from, hundreds of $1,000 media partnerships to begging for $10,000 for the season. So it was really, really hard. Like you're standing, how you have to do things is sort of almost one fan by one. And they, at early friendly matches, you're just talking to people, and it's just as much as you've come in, sort of I probably came in with big ideas of all the crazy, amazing things I want to do and campaigns, and we're going to use all this tech and we'll bring in, a new CDP and everything, have a great MarTech stack, and we're going to be really push the boundaries. No, I was in the pouring rain, in the merch tent, trying to talk up and sell memberships that first year. We were down at Fates, and we're at any community event we could get to. We'd go out to local clubs training with players, so you sort of have to think, well, if there's no budget, we've got owned media. We just have to do lots of things and push that back out to as many people as we can.
Was it a little bit back to the future for you, sort of going back into media pitching mode, but then also understanding what I want to ask you about and sort of set the scene for the international audience is how that you're marketing to Western Melbourne and regional Victoria. You weren't just another Melbourne team, and there are plans for stadiums and really trying to develop that corridor of fans. How did you go about, again, limited budget and those kind of things, but tackle effectively having multiple markets you wanted to push into, both the Western Melbourne corridor, but then regionally with Geelong and Ballarat and Bendigo? How did you sort of tackle that as getting one fan at a time?
Yeah, so I think how we did that and the sort of strategy on that was to really grind in locally, but we also needed through our social to be somewhat famous, and we were blessed with having like Alessandro Diamanti arrive as our first captain. So he comes in with a pretty decent social following, but also gets the world watching a bit. And there's anything that trying to get a local to be interested in a new product, if the rest of the world or, a portion of the rest of the world think it's pretty cool that something that you've got locally, then that really helps. So we kind of had that sort of parallel running. We've got sort of use our social to push out that we've got to a bigger global audience, but also then do the sort of nuts and bolts at a local level, and that is that sort of out and about in the market and doing, like I remember sitting at in Geelong in the first season, sitting at like a little table with giveaways with our CEO on Boxing Day, because we were playing there. That was one of our first locations, was Geelong, and everyone just had to do everything. Like I don't think I saw family for a good 6 months, but we also had a free ticket strategy in Geelong, and we publicly and by other clubs, you do get backlash on that. But the best way to become part of something, and we knew we had to get in people's hearts, is to experience it. So we put a lot of effort into our first games in Geelong to the fan experience and made sure we had fun things for the kids and made little changes, like after the match, we'd let the kids out on the field and we played on an oval, which is another thing hard to get people to go to soccer on an oval, which is, built for 35,000 people. How do you make that a good experience? Because the best football experiences are based on the crowd and the noise and the active support. But, letting the kids go out there and making the players just interact with them. So it wasn't behind a fence. They were behind a tiny little rope, but they were actually with them. And it was that sort of brand messaging that we're doing this together. We're not perfect. We're not huge. We're not Melbourne Victory. We're not there yet, but you're going to be part of something pretty special. So one day you're going to tell the kids, I was at the first game, or I was at the first championship of this club. We did a nice piece of content piece, Future Is Now. I think it was in our leading into the third season. And it was a content piece, kind of had some humour in it because we want to entertain people with this content that was in 2086, looking back, and sort of as the head coach who was a woman, president who was the woman, and just sort of reminding the current players of how hard they did it at the start. So you can kind of own the hardship of the start by making people feel part of it.
Do you think there was part of that, those early fans that came on board, then you fast forward a couple of years and, you win the league, being the quickest expansion team to win the A-League championship, to go from, sitting in a tent trying to sell memberships in that first year, and what is it like? What was your memories of that win and some of the things that your team experienced on that day?
Yeah, I mean, just to put it into perspective as well, we started the club in 2019. It was the first season. So we had about 4 months before COVID hit. So not only are we starting a football club in a new geographical area, in a challenger sport in Melbourne, in being the A-League, it's miles behind AFL, and we know that. We also then went into a pandemic. So we probably felt we were just starting to get runs on the board with crowds and attendance in the end of 2019, and then boom, COVID, and we can't get to our fans, we can't interact. So everything we did there was through digital and social, and we just tried to do things differently and make it fun. I remember when Diamante won the A-League Player of the Season, and A-League media had said to me, we need to do presser afterwards, Zoom conference with Dia, and Dia's, English is his second language. He's not good at the straighty 180 stuff, and said, I'll see what we think anyway. But end up, it was his idea. He sent me a piece of content. He said, I want to do this instead of the press conference. How about it? 9 out of 10 media managers would say no. I'm like, we're doing it. And it was him at his house, up and down the stairs, 2 bottles of Dom champagne in his hands and just dancing around the room. That was our response to him winning. So, just trying to do things differently and not be so rigid on stuff. And so I think we did have, I hope we have got a little bit of a reputation of the brand that's trying to do things differently. And fast forward to the third year with that championship, I think we'd lost or drawn the last 4 games of the season in the men's, and then hadn't beaten Wellington since the very first Western United game in 2019, and had them first in the finals. And then we had to beat Melbourne Victory in a 2-game round, and did that most phenomenal 2 matches the second leg of it was pretty phenomenal, just that experience beating the biggest club in town and having all of their fans there in our sort of pocket of green and black at the end, which had grown since the start but is nowhere near the size of Melbourne Victory. Just seeing the players run to them and the closeness of, photos of the board in there with the actives and everyone, that togetherness again, you can see that it is starting to build something special. And then, the grand final knocking off Melbourne City, it's still pinch me moments, and you just the workload that a media and marketing team has to do. And when you suddenly in finals and winning, it's the TIFOs, it's all we printed T-shirts for everybody, and we've just, amplified our production team by double. We actually filmed a documentary that whole season, so we were lucky enough to have those guys following us, and just to be able to, you're trying to enjoy it, but you're also working like crazy because you want to get that content out to as many people as possible. And, fun things, with the players running in crazy on Aloisi's press conference, and just those little moments of, if you can, look back to, which we really tried to find those moments of content filled with emotion. There's, photos of just players, just the tears, just the workload that they did to get there, or, from the founders of the club, your likes of your Steve Horvats that are just who put everything into the club to get there that early and do it. And just actually, I think that sort of belief that the club, you don't win championships if the club's not, hasn't got the right culture, or it's not in the right direction off the pitch as well. So I think it was a bit of a sort of we're here moment.
And then from that, you're a bit of a glutton for punishment, because then you go about saying our club's not whole yet, we don't have a women's team, and you go to get a license and don't get it on the first try, and then set up the infrastructure to be successful, and then have your debut season last year. What was that roller coaster like?
Yeah, it was crazy. I think, the drive from the board to always have that women's team, and when you're not a club with just one team, it just was fantastic. And the work sort of from Amanda Stella and Calder United, and the sort of the ideation of her and the CEO and the board to build that relationship, and almost like, let's just make it until they give us a license and show them we can do it, is fantastic. And for my team has stayed the same size, so we've got double the amount of product and content, but having the women's team join now, and only being 4 years in with the men, we have the opportunity not to have the women as an afterthought, or not be on sort of equal footing in terms of content and how much love we give them in terms of campaign. We know that women's football's at a different stage in the life cycle, and the men's content on the metrics will get better results. But for us, the strategy there is to be as equal as we can. We've got them on combined channels, and build out as much focus on the girls as the boys. And I think that's been really appreciated by a lot of the female players. And, you see the proof's in the pudding when you go out to a match and there's all the little girls screaming over the fence, and the boys to the girls, like, they don't see the difference. That generation have no idea. And I mean, a lot of help in that, especially with football from the Matildas, but really trying to make sure we have a balanced approach to both our teams. And it's been exciting. We had some players from the States in there as well. So, using their profiles and sharing the content and getting it back over to different countries as well has been really great for us. And then, the girls won the right for a home final. It was in New South Wales. That was, a challenge to get fans there. Like, it's a challenge to get the fans up to the men's grand final, but we put on a bus for that, and we did what we could. But it's hard to get that support as it is, but then to be in another state. But the girls did an amazing job, and that experience is really good for them. And we, part of content-wise, the content series of All Access that APL have done has been amazing, and we've used our first. Each club got 3 episodes, so we used our first one and featured Chloe Lagazzo and that was shot at the first ever women's game against Melbourne Victory. So working wherever we can to get content on our girls and have people learn more about them. The girls are actually, in terms of talent, they're very different to the guys. Like, I think there's a bit of an ease of working with the female talent sometimes. Not as many complaints. I shouldn't say that, but just in general, there's a lot of more willingness to do it. I think, obviously, knowing where they are and what they've got to do to market the club and the sport.
Yeah, definitely, and you're obviously going to have that potential halo effect after having the FIFA Women's World Cup. In Australia, in July, it's going to be really exciting to see, what that means for W League in the upcoming season. Yeah,
definitely. We've got Chloe's in the provincial squad for Matildas. We've got 2 girls in the provincial squad for the Philippines. So again, the beauty of the sport is that international connection. And the World Cup is just, I don't even think we realise how amazing it's going to be in the next few months to have that here. I think it'll shock a lot of people. The ticket sales are through the roof, and just that to experience that. And there's already huge amounts of kids playing football. So it's such a great sport for girls. It's just going to go next level, and it can, with the World Cup, with the sort of growth of the MLS, and also women's football in America. It's all the pieces are there for football in Australia at the national level to really to grow even further. And I really hope that is achieved for the A-Leagues.
Definitely. Well, Chloe, I really do appreciate you coming to the podcast. I want to get to our Sports Geek closing 5. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
Well, as I said, from Geelong, so I think it would have been, used to play netball down at Cardinia Park, and then I probably went over and sat with Dad at Cardinia Park and maybe watched like a Gary Ablett Senior and probably didn't like it, but then, definitely grew to be part of the family and loved the Cats.
Definitely. For those who don't know, Gary Ablett Senior is known as God, definitely down at Geelong, but pretty much affectionately across all AFL circles. So one of the best to ever do it. Do you have a favourite food memory or a go-to food when you're going to a sports event?
Well, if I'm a spectator, I probably can't go past some hot chips. But I think anyone that works in media for sport will know the love of like a party pie at halftime in the media centre when you've done about 20,000 steps and forgotten to eat or drink. So, probably the party pie.
Definitely. What's the first app you open in the morning?
Well, Western United's based out at the hangar with the Bombers, and I'm in Geelong, so Waze, just check that traffic. It's probably hitting me up at the moment.
Definitely. Is there someone that you follow? It might be someone on social media or an author or someone that the podcast listeners should listen or follow?
I follow. There's a guy, Chris Nudd, who did have a podcast series Tagline, and he's also just moved over. He's a creative editor at Ad Age. I think he's at Nudd, Nudd, on Twitter. He interviews and speaks to a lot of super creative minds and always has interesting stories about how campaigns are formed. And then also just clubs, like I'll follow and watch Angel City, and then like LAFC, what they've done there is amazing. And then sort of fun things like the Savannah Bananas on TikTok, like their story is crazy, and just in terms of building entertaining content, like that's, next level.
Definitely. I'm hoping to get Jessie Cole on the podcast in the near future, so from the Savannah Bananas. So, I completely agree. Lastly, I asked people what the social media platform is your MVP, and so you can answer it personally. What's your social media platform of preference, but then also maybe what's the one that's working the best for you at Western United?
Yeah, I think I've definitely drunk the TikTok Kool-Aid. Just even find myself using it like Google at the moment. So, therefore I've converted. And then for us, we're growing our TikTok and, that's a really good sort of top of funnel piece for us. But I think Facebook's sort of coming back as well for us. Again, I talked about Facebook groups at our United group that we've got going, and again, safe space to talk and really grow the club. And I just feel like it's been down for a little bit, the old Facebook, but I feel like it's starting to serve us better and might be ready for a little bit of a reprise.
Terrific. Well, Chloe, thanks very much for your time. How I always ask my listeners to reach out and say thank you if they've enjoyed the podcast, which I think they would have. What's the best platform for them to do so and tell you that they like the podcast?
To reach me, probably LinkedIn.
Terrific. Well, all the best for the season ahead, and appreciate you taking the time.
Cheers. Thanks, Sean.
Learn from the Sports Geek Amplify Season 2 cohort. Trajectory, Xtonet, SeatGeek, Sponsor CX, and Stats Perform. For more, go to sportsgeekamplify.com.
Thanks again to Chloe Alsop. As I always say, please connect with the guests like Chloe. You can do so on LinkedIn. Chloe Alsop is available on LinkedIn. I'll tag her when I put up the post for this episode. So please reach out, tell her what you liked about the episode, and please check out the Dumb Ways to Die if you haven't seen it. It'll be linked in the show notes. The show notes are always available at sportsgeekhq.com/the episode number 338 in this instance. Before I jump off this episode, just a little bit of talk about Digital to Dollars. It is our process for helping you develop your digital strategy and commercialize your assets. The key pillars are know your audience, know your content, know your distribution. That sort of forms the basis of your digital strategy. And then we look at your valuation, know your value, and know your pitch, which is the selling part, which is the commercialization. But one of the ones I want to look at the moment is distribution. And that normally involves what are the different social media platforms you're on, how are you using the different channels to talk to your fans, which ones are under-realized, things like, how are you using email marketing to better connect. It's obviously... a lot of the times it's there, but it's not used effectively. But the one I want to talk about at the moment is TikTok, because either teams and leagues are either jumping in, being on the platform because it's a new platform. It's a hot platform. It's a trending platform. It's one that it's growing of great knots. So it's always the case of getting on those platforms early, and you get that early reach and you get that early audience. But there are still people reticent and trying to understand why they want to do it. And that's the real killer question for me is to know your why on why you're tackling a platform. What do you want to get out of it? Yes, it's okay to jump on a platform and accrue audience in a fast rate, which you can do on TikTok, but you need to understand the commercial realities or the outcomes you want from that platform. Do you want them to be season ticket holders? Do you want them to be people that sign up to your stream? Do you want to sell them some merch? So you've got to have that in mind when you're going into the platform, because TikTok, as much as it is potentially giving you lots of likes and views and terrific digital numbers, you've got to figure out what that conversion piece looks like, and the audience and the content that's required for the platform is vastly different from what we've been doing previously. I think every time another platform has come along, it's sort of just been an extension. And there can be some reuse and repurposing and slight tweaking to go, hey, here's a post that's going out on Twitter, but it's also going out on Instagram with a different version. It's almost going out on Facebook with a slightly different version. And there has been that constant talk of, you've got to customize for every platform. But resources are short and stretched. And so we're not seeing a lot of that across, those main platforms. The content that you have done on Facebook and Instagram and for a lot of the points won't work on TikTok. And so TikTok is, requiring dedicated content, to get dedicated content creation, dedicated creative nous. So I don't think that has been appropriately, understood at an executive level. To the amount of work that goes into what a good TikTok looks like. and a good TikTok that, a team that requires to distributing content on TikTok. I mean, the good thing is it doesn't have that the time base of it, like, hey, it's a Monday, this is the post, because there effectively are no clocks in TikTok. It's a bit like a casino that way. Something that you post 12 months ago can still be ticking over. So it's one, understanding the resource requirement of this new platform. That's what we always talk about when looking at a new platform. Yes, we look at the audience opportunity and the audiences that are specifically on the platform and what you can get out of it, and things like growing reach and growing brand awareness with your brand with a potentially a new audience, whether that be an audience you grow on your channels or an audience that you grow and get in front of via creators and influencers that are also talking about your brand. But then also, what is the resource cost of getting on those platforms? So, when someone says, "Hey, we're going to get on TikTok, look at all these free likes," that's a really basic way of looking at a new channel. You really got to step back and say, what is our channel plan? What are our goals? What do we want to get out of it? And also, where do you want that fan base to end up? How do you want them to engage? What are your objectives? So sometimes there is opportunity in moving fast and jumping on a platform quickly, but I think the resource heaviness that TikTok requires is one that you should be going into with a plan, with a, hey, what are we going to do? But also have a plan that has some nimbleness and some agility to it, because you need to be able to respond to trends, adapt to trends, create content around particular trends, and some of those trends you don't know what they are. So it's a harder platform to plan for, because it's moving so quickly, and some of those trends you need to assess on how they've gone about working. So that's it from me. And for those of you who I did catch up with at Seat, this episode's being released after Seat. Great to see you. I'm going to say that even before I've done it, and looking forward to catching up with more people at conferences in the future. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Looking to help your digital or sponsorship team? Book in for a Pick My Brain session with Sean Callanan to help your team level up. Book now at sportsgeekhq.com/pickmybrain. Want to help drive more revenue from your digital efforts? Book a time for a call. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call.